Good evening, all of you guys. Hope you are doing fine in this situation. So today I will present a talk about Deepmarine seismic geomorphology and sedimentology. As Mbak Marinda introduced that now I'm a PhD research fellow at Norwegian University of Science and Technology. So this is also part of my lecture in the master program in the seismic interpretation course. Okay, so just briefly introduce myself. So my name is Dicky Harishidayat. I graduate from University of Pembangunan Nasional Veteran Yogyakarta in Indonesia, majoring in geology, and I continue to Norway to pursue my master in petroleum geoscience, working in seismic sedimentology, and now I'm in the last stage of my PhD at the same university in Norway. I have working experience before coming to Norway, mostly in Indonesia, and surprisingly, my ex-boss, Pak Firman Yaman, I worked with Pak Firman Yaman at Pasiren Puri Petroleum Resources Limited during 2010 until 2012 as an exploration geologist under his guidance. So I'm glad that I met Pak Firman Yaman. Thank you, Pak. And I also have geophysics experience as well, especially in the seismic interpretation and CSEM in Norway. It's quite famous. And I'm also working here at the university, mainly teaching and student advising for master student. So since I know that you guys have a different background, geologists, geophysicists, physicists, and any other background. So maybe some of you didn't familiar with what is this seismic reflection data. So during the first couple of slides, I will introduce you about the seismic reflection data itself before we are going deeper into seismic geomorphology and sedimentology. So there's a video from PGS that how this data is obtained in marine environment. So just have a look.
Marine seismic acquisition is a very complicated and highly technical part of the hydrocarbon exploration process. One of the great challenges concerning the exploration for oil and gas is that the subsurface geology of potential interest can be covered by many kilometers of sediment. As we cannot see it with our eyes, we create and record sound waves that are reflected from the geological layers. By producing sound and sending it towards our target, we can record and interpret the reflection of that sound. This gives us a picture of what the subsurface looks like. The sound is produced from compressed air devices towed behind a seismic vessel. The reflection of this sound is recorded by receivers which are housed within seismic streamers. Multiple streamers are towed behind the vessel, with each being many kilometers long. The information that is collected is recorded on the vessel and is then analyzed by geophysicists, with the results effectively creating a visual representation of the geology below. The key targets are oil and gas accumulations. Technology has enabled these operations to become safer, more efficient, and more precise. This will ensure that marine seismic operations will remain key to future oil and gas exploration.
So now you know how this seismic reflection data is acquired. This is a marine case. So after some acquisition and processing, so what is the typical seismic reflection data looks like when it comes to geophysicists, seismic interpreter is like this. This is one of the example where you have red and blue colors representing the amplitude, and then this is the explanation of this different color. So basically, the red and blue here is representing the interface between two sedimentary layers. We know that every sedimentary layers, they have special velocity and density that function of the lithology and fluid. So this seismic reflection data is trying to image those things into an image like this. So in the next in all on in this lecture in this talk you will see a lot of different colors representing the different density and velocity from the sedimentary layers. Just keep in mind. Right, seismic geomorphology. So we know that the 3D seismic reflection data is started during 60s, 70s. And then after that, Alistair Brown, he has a famous book in 3D seismic interpretation. And then now I think it's and they have he has like a 12 version of this. And then when it comes to seismic geomorphology, it started in 2007. Even before in 2004, there is some special publication in Geological Society of London about the 3D seismic technology. But the specific publication about the seismic geomorphology started in 2007, where Richard Davis, Henry Posamenter, Leslie Wood, and Joe Cartwright, they make this special publication. And fortunately, I met Henry Posamenter at the APGS 2017. Henry, say salam to you, Pak Firman. And then, yeah, I mean, I discussed a lot about seismic geomorphology with Henry, and actually he also came to my poster at the time. So this is the fundamental things about the seismic geomorphology in 2007. And in 2010, in 2012, SEPM, they also have dedicated publication and also conference about this seismic geomorphology. And now in 2021, Geological Society of London, they start to update this technology, this technique, by publishing this special publication on seismic geomorphology. And fortunately, I have invited by them to publish to their special publication. So just stay tuned on my research social media. Then I also will publish the post-print version of this into my social media research. If not, you can just send me an email as well, then I can send to you. So I divided the objective of this talk into 3 parts. I know that you guys have different backgrounds, so I try to be simple as I can to explain about this talk. So the first session is about understanding the Deepmarine terminology, processes, and the products, since we are dealing with sedimentology. And the second part, we will discuss about seismic geomorphology and sedimentology on the Deepmarine depositional elements. And the last one, we need to understand what is the application of this seismic geomorphology, especially in the Deepmarine area. So the definition of Deepmarine, there are 2 definitions at least Some people said deep water, some people said deep marine. So what is the difference? So the difference is that if you talk about deep water, this is from San Mugan and friends, said that if it is deep water or deep marine refers to batial water depth. And then seaward of continental shelf break on the slope and the basin. So and they said that about deep water, it means that it can be deep water in the non-marine area, like for instance in the lacustrine, right? And second terminology from Posamentier and friend, including Kevin Pickering, he has good books also in the deep marine system. So the term of deep water of deep marine refers to the area of the self edge to the basin floor. So they didn't count it the meters, but as long as you are off the self edge to the basin floor, that is called deep marine. And also the Emiliano Muti 1992 mentioned about this deep marine or turbidite as his favorite words is in the deep water environments, and it can be both marine or and lacustrine. So and today the focus is in the deep marine, so we didn't discuss about deep water in the lacustrine area. So it's now is deep marine, and I will put emphasis on this terminology or classification by Posamentier and Walker. They about deep marine. So from the self edge to the basin floor area. Maybe some of you will have a question: how is the deep marine looks like? I mean, Samugan said it's below 200 meters. So maybe if you like diving, I don't know how deep you can reach, but there is a good video from Smith Ocean that they use UAV. They deep into this deep marine area, especially in this canyon system. So we are now we are in this Australia, and then this ROV is they're diving into this canyon system here, the Bremer Canyon. So how it looks like, I think we can just jump into 24.
We start to be used to this view here.
So this view is the view of ROV, and it's viewing this area here. So this is the track of this ROV here. So now this viewing is viewing this canyon wall. So if you see in this canyon system here, you see some very tiny, maybe foraminifera, plankton.
Maybe just have a look to the multi-beam map that is accompanying our actual imaging of the seascape here. The scale is different, of course. Now our scale is meter or tens of meter, and the map over there is the margin here that is including the entire canyon system that we are going to visit during this first part of the expedition. And you see the escarpment. Let's say that Australia is it would be basically the Black Strip Pond. So actually everything that we are seeing is the underwater topography, the one that we have been reconstructed by using the multi-beam.
So if you look at this depth, it's 1,200 meters. And remember that you are in this area, in this deep marine, we are dealing with temperature, salinity, and the pressure. Just keep in mind.
we use false colors. So again, you see a cluster of Acesta, the big clam that we have sampled before in a different context. Okay, now we are getting with a better detail to the specific area we are looking at. That is the western branch of the Bremer Canyon. That is one of the most relevant features here, indenting the southwestern Australian margin. Okay, now you see more and more in detail. Now you can see even the track of our ROV on the bottom. This very relevant for later exploitation of the data.
So if you look at this canyon wall and also the canyon area, I mean, it's quite calm, right? So that's what typically sedimentary process in the deep marine, especially in the self-edge canyon, where if there is no sediment source from the self, it's just like this, everything is just calm. And if we are talking about the geological time, that we are talking about a million years. So yeah. So you see this escarpment, the V shape or the U shape canyon that delivered sediment from fluvial and shelf area in the north here, the red color on the bathymetry, and then down to this basin area here. Some fish. Yeah. So now this is how the deep marine looks like, especially in this self-edge canyon. It's also the same if you go to the deeper in the basin floor area. I mean, if you don't have any sediment input from the terrestrial, self, and self-edge, so everything is just calm. What you can expect is just suspension of the fine grain material that become a shell later on. Good. So this is from Doricstow 1985, one of the classification about deep marine processes and products. So as you know, there is several classification in the deep marine. We have Doricstow, Henry Possamentier, Donald Plow, Mugan, we have Thierry Mulder. So they make all different classification. So it doesn't mean that if I use this classification, it means that the other are wrong. But this is just based on my study. So, for instance, maybe if you work in the continental margin, Doricstow and Possamentier classification is much more relevant to you. But if you work mostly on the slope area, maybe San Mugan is suitable for you. So this classification that I presented here is just because of my my study area. So Doricstow, he divided this process and products into at least three important things. So the first one is this one. It's about rockfall, creep, slide, slump, and how this process happens in the deep marine area. There is a video from Geoscience Australia that explain about this. So just have a look. In this case, it's talk about the tsunami that caused by slides on the self-edge. So this is the self-edge area, and then there is a slope failure that create this mass movement to the basin floor area, and then it can generate a tsunami. So this is one example. We will discuss this later on the application of the seismic geomorphology. So this the submarine slides creating the tsunami wave, then reach the onshore area like this, and then you have the tsunami then. Good. Next, we have turbidite. It's quite famous. How this turbidite looks like. There is some
turbidity currents or density
video here that you can
usually
see.
at the bottom of the ocean or lakes or sometimes quiescent pools and rivers. Here are showing numerous examples of turbidity currents in laboratory apparatus. This first example is a turbidity current running down a ramp. You can see clearly that the turbulent head, the body, and the tail behind. Seen from the other side, it looks very similar. Once again, you can see the turbulent head, the body behind it, and the very end of the tail. This is the front view with the turbidity current running toward you. This was taken with a GoPro. Here's a turbidity current running again down the same slope. Again, you can see the anatomy of the turbidity current. Once again, a turbidity current running down a ramp, but this time entering into an open basin, spreading out in a lobe shape, and encountering an obstacle.
So you can see that this turbidity current has at the end has a lobe shape. So this is also important for the next depositional element discussion. And next is contourite or bottom current or sediment waves. So this, we know that on the deep ocean, we also have thermohaline circulation. That if you look at this arrow, that's the thermohaline circulation that also bring sediments transported and then deposited around this circulation. So it's everywhere in the world. So let's move to, this is South Atlantic. I think we have Antarctica. Yeah, so it's everywhere in the world. So this contourite is mainly because of this thermohaline circulation. Good, and when it comes to interpretation of seismic geomorphology and sedimentology, I always surprised with this IAGI memoir 26. It's a basic book about seismic stratigraphy, but also this seismic phases classification by Peter Fell and friend. I think there is, yeah, and this seismic phases classification, reflection termination pattern, reflection configuration, that is really important for seismic geomorphology and sedimentological interpretation. So yeah, I mean, you can see here we have this is reflection termination pattern, and this is reflection configuration. So we will see a lot of this seismic phases analysis in the next couple of slides. So that's the first objective. Now you know the terminology about Deepmarine, the process, how the turbidites, contourite, submarine slides looks like, and also the products. So next, we are discussing about seismic geomorphology and sedimentology on the different depositional elements. So this is the depositional elements based on Posamientier and Walker, and also the Risto 1985. So this is, in the next couple of slides, we will discuss on these depositional elements related to seismic geomorphology and sedimentology. When I discussed with Pa Henry, I asked him what is the strategy or tips or tricks to become a good seismic geomorphology as Pa Henry. And then he said to me that, Dicky, if you want to be a good seismic geomorphologist, you have to see a lot of seismic data. you have to see different kinds, different case, or different type depositional element from different world. So now I will bring you guys around the world. So I will give you different example around the world about seismic geomorphology and sedimentology. So keep tight. So now we are discussing about the staging area. It's located here in the head of the canyon. This is Pak Henry said this is the self-age delta that transport sediment from terrestrial to the head of the canyon. So now I bring you to the Norwegian Barents Sea, where we have this beautiful meandering self-age canyon. This is the head of the canyon. You see some beautiful meandering canyon. And then all this red, orange, and blue is cross-section on every 250 meters. So to be able to reconstruct the, to be able to measure the morphometry analysis. And then this is 3 example of the red canyon. We have a proximal section here, medial and distal. If you look at the shape, the morphology, the proximal canyon 1715 is located this one. So this is a 1750 section. So it's quite narrow compared to the medial and distal, while the distal area 11,000 here, this one is quite wider compared to the proximal area. So if we plot, so all this point is the point that I measure every 250 meters along the canyon from proximal to the distal. This is sinuosity and the slope gradient every 250 meters, again in the proximal, medial, and distal. If you look at this is the depth bit versus down canyon distance. From here, you can see that we have increasing in the depth. All the canyon is increasing in the depth. There is some undulating here because of the fault activity. And how about the width of the canyon? So so the solid line is base width of the canyon, and the dashed line is top width of the canyon. You can see we have general trend is increasing, but there is some also undulating curve like this one because of the fault activity. And this is cross-sectional area in 2D kilometers square is also the same. We have the increasing in the depth, and also we have some undulating in this area here. So the increasing, the general trend in increasing number of this canyon is tells you about how the turbidity current or gravity flow it's shaping this canyon in the several phases. So now I bring you to West Africa. This is a publication by Job, Zen Job, at Florida School of Mines. So this is in Equatorial Guinea, where he mapped this beautiful bathymetry data. And then there is one example here. So this is the canyon. This is proximal, and this is distal. So this section is this one here. So in this case, you see that you have what's called as high amplitude reflector that represented coarse material compared to these conformable reflection elements that more representing the suspension of fine grain material. Now I bring you to New Zealand, offshore New Zealand in the Great South Basin. where we have this shelf edge delta. I for my publication, you can get it from my ResearchGate profile. So just googling my name, then you can go to my ResearchGate profile. Then you can download my publication for free. So this is a Great South Basin in the New Zealand. In this case, this self-edge delta is also dealing with the prograding clinoform. If you look at here, this is the clinoform in the self-edge. So this clinoform here, we have a 1, 2, 3 clinoform, is dealing with also with self-edge delta, and this is the basin floor area here in the east. So if you can see in this clinoform development, we have some high isolated amplitude that this one, if you look at this red and blue, remember the interface of sedimentary layers. So this is, we have isolated bright amplitude that represented channels. So if you look at this, this is the channels from this time slice, from clinoform 1, clinoform 2, clinoform 3. So as I mentioned before, the bright isolated amplitude, that is the channels. And if you look at this here, in this area here, we see channels that become gully in this self-edge area here. And this is how the section one of the clinoform looks like. So again, you see you have a bright amplitude, isolated bright amplitude that represented channels. Now we talk about gully. This is this is from Barentse, Norwegian Barentse. This is one of my PhD project. So in this case, we are dealing with a gully. So I add this gully into Posamentier model since there is no gully here. So gullies was usually located here in this self-edge. And if you look at the morphology here, the gully is usually straight like this, and with similar width and depth down gully distance. So this is a cross plot between depth and gully distance, where we are in the proximal, medial, and distal. Again, this is sinuosity and the gradient, slope gradient of this area. So if you, of course, we are increasing in the depth, but if you look at the width, if you remember comparing to a canyon where we have very undulating curve, but now in this gully, the width is more or less the same. I mean, there is no significant changing in the gully. There is some significant changing here in this red gully, is because of we have a slides or mass movement inside the gully. But overall, more or less the same. So it means that we have a less variation in width and depth, and general trend is increasing. So now I bring you to offshore Gabon, West Africa, where Lydia Lonergan and friend from Imperial College mapped this gully in the South Edge. So this is shelf area. This is the edge, and you have a lot of gully. If you look at this, it's a uniform, more or less uniform in the width and the also on the height as well. So if you look at this section here, how it's how the seismic looks like. So it looks like this. This is the bathymetry data, yeah. So we need to look at in this interval. So you have you have a undulating system like this, and usually it's a V shape undulating with uniform in width compared to the one in the canyon. Yeah. So now we are here now in the slump scars. So it's close to the Self Edge. Now I bring you again to the Norwegian Barents Sea, where we have this example of these slump scars. So in this case, this is a map view. This is a deep angle degree. So if you look at this cross section, you see that you have a very wide incision compared to the canyon. And yeah, look at that self edge. And since the slump scars is creating a depression, so the depression, so this slump scar is because of a slope failure of the longshore drift. And after that, since this slump scar or slide scars creating a depression, then this depression is acting as a conveyor or conduits for the sediment from the shelf in this area to transport the sediment from shelf to the basin floor area. And this is the 3 section from as we can see obviously that if you look at here, from proximal to distal, we are increasing in the width, both in the top width and the base width of this slide scar or slump scar. And this is the scaling relationship on the morphometry analysis that I did. And we can see in the slump scar, of course, it's the number is increasing down a slight distance, but there might be some anomaly here on the width. Like this one is because of the fault activity. And now we are talking about, we are going deeper in this channel system. Now I bring you to Eastern Mediterranean Sea, where I have a offshore Israel to look at the seismic geomorphology on the channel system. This is bathymetry data offshore Israel. You can see beautiful channels here. You can see clearly here. And also some of the channels correspond to this mass transport complex. And then we have this slide scar here. And also we have several canyon system here in this northern part of Israel. Or I think I think this is in Lebanon, I think, yeah. So this is the shelf, the onshore area that supplying sediment to this Deepmarine system here. And this is one of the example of channel system in this area. This is time slice of the seismic. You see some beautiful meandering channel. Also influencing by this fault system here. And this is example of, now we zoom in into the system. So you see this beautiful channel here. And also we have this fault that influencing this channel system. And now we zooming into the seismic section. So this is 2 examples of seismic section. So if you look at this panel here, we have high amplitude isolated channel system. This is coming from this section here. So we have 1, 2, 3. So it's 1, 2, 3 channels system. that has lateral accretion. So it's movement. And in this system, we have also the same. We have incision of the channels, 1, 2, 3 channels, and this one is the same channels actually. So we can see incision of the channels and isolated filling deposit of the channels. So if you remember the gravity flow video, you have a head, body of the that you have a head and tail. So probably usually this channel is part of that processes. So now I give you another example of a channel system. This is from India, offshore India. It's from Kola 2012, where he mapped this. I think this is one of the best meandering channels has been mapped. So we can see here, this is one of the cross section crossing that channels. You see, you have a chaotic, quite chaotic or disrupted, bright amplitude anomaly here, and then it's surrounded by surrounded by low amplitude continuous reflector that representing settlement of fine grain material. And there is some slice here that you see here was beautiful meandering channel here. This is slice 4, so it's here. So it's crossing all these canyon, sorry, all these channel. So in the big scale, this channel system is located in one big incision, right? So it's what you call as a confine channels. So the channels is developed inside this big incision. So then you can see this beautiful meandering channel here. The bright color here representing sandy material, while the low amplitude is representing the fine material. So the nature of sinuosity is due to the channel aggradation and lateral migration. This is also another example from slice number 5, which is here. So it's deeper, slicing deeper, is crossing this package as well. Still, we see some beautiful meandering channels, beautiful meandering deep marine channels, and you see that the development of the channels has quite sharp aggradational. This is due to mostly because of the weakly depositing turbidity currents in the channels. And the wide channel courses are not due to the channelized flow, but due to the overband fills. Next, I bring you to New Zealand, where we have a unique channel system that influencing by this volcanic activity. So this is Kora volcano. If you know about this, so this is in the offshore New Zealand, in the Taranaki Basin, where you have this volcanic buried in this depth that also in giving a sediment and transported to the deep basin to this area here. So if you look at this, the deposition of sediment is filling by this clinoform system going to these directions. And also we have this VMTD, means the volcanic mass transport deposit. So this is the VMTD. So all these depositional element in this Deepmarine system, MTD, and these Deepmarine channels are influencing by this volcano and then creating a volcaniclastic system. And this is a time slice from this interval here. Oops, this interval. So this is the Kora volcano, and look, if you look at to the side, you see some beautiful meandering channel as well that has this volcaniclastic influence. Next, I bring you to Bahama, Eastern Florida, offshore Florida. That we have. This is the grid. This is the Bahama Bank, and then this is the bathymetry data. Then you can see that we have some escarpment coming from this reef to this basin floor area here. And another unique things is also that you see in this area here, the system tend to bending to this direction, because remember we have the current, the Atlantic current going like this. And now we are zoom into this area here, where we see some beautiful channels as well. And this is a section from these two lines. So in this case, the source area is very close to the system. So you can see in the cross section here, you mostly is a V-shaped incision. It means that it tells you about the process of this incision. So it means that mostly is close to the system, close to the source area, where when it is wider, you are more distal, and then it's experience more longer process. And now we also have a good example where we have a mix between carbonate and siliciclastic. This is example from Indonesia, from Makassar Strait, where we have, this is the bathymetry data. And then now we are going to this area here where we have this canyon channels, MTD in this area. So this is influencing by longshore drift current that transported the sediment from the Mahakam Delta into this area here. And also we have some small river coming into this area as well. So this is how it looks like. This is the bathymetry data. So you see we have carbonate shelf margin here, and also we have this low stand delta as well. So those two things are the source of the sediments, and then it's bring and this canyon system, canyon channel system, are bringing the sediment from this proximal area to the depositional area here down in the basin floor. And there is some cross section here, A, B, C, D, that we can have a look. So in this A cross section, this one here, still we have a V shape like this, while in the B, this one, the canyon system is getting wider. Remember, this is in the middle area. And also, maybe we can go to this D here, this D. So there is some, if you look at the D here, it correspond to this meandering channel here. So that's why you have this kind of stack system going on. Good, and now there is also some good example that we have a canyon channels lobes in one seismic data. This time is from Santos Basin, offshore Brazil. So in this case, we have a very beautiful canyon channels lobe system here. So we have a canyon system, and the yellow or red is infer a sandy deposit, and whitish is infer muddy deposit. So this system is transporting the sediment from this beach ridge complex here, and then transported the sediment to become channels and lobes. Look at this big lobes here. And if you look at this cross section here, remember that this lobes is also stacked by channel system. So if you look at this, we have a bright isolated amplitude that represented to single loops or single channels, while you also have this whitish inside the lobe system that represent the fine grain material because of the suspension. And then cross section here in the proximal area where you have this canyon system. This one is this area here in the middle where you have this canyon system, and these bright things here that representing this gravel lack at the base of this canyon system. And the last one is here, this section here. Still, you have some incision here, and also here incision. Good, and now I'll region Barents Sea, where we have also this beautiful lobes or frontal splay, as Pa Henry has in his terminology. So this is a Deepmarine channel that also correspond to this frontal splay or lobes. And again, this bright amplitude here is representing the descending material, while the background here is representing the fine material. And you're familiar with these things, and this is how it looks like. So this is a horizon slice from this seismic cube. So if you look at this frontal splay here, it's always correspond to, look at this section, it's always correspond to this bright amplitude and isolated. Always correspond to bright isolated amplitude, and it's surrounded by this low massive amplitude represented the fine grain deposit of the suspension. And if you look at this area here where we have this incision, and this is the shelf, and this is the incision that transported the sediment from the south to the basin floor area here. And since this shelf are building basin ward into the progression system like this. And this is the same case, but now we are going more into the channel system. It also has the same response. So all these channels, this one, and this one, are correspond to this isolated bright amplitude that surrounded by low massive amplitude that represent the suspension of the fine grain deposits. And this is the scale, the 1 kilometer scale. I also want to give you another example of the lobes from the Norwegian North Sea, where this is quite a famous field called Frick Field. And then if you look at this red color, this is represented gas field, and the area of this red color is representing the lobes dimension, this one. So this lobes is also stacked with submarine channel system. So stacked between lobes and channels, and it's prograding to the northeast direction to this area here. And then we have the two orientation of the sediment pathway. One is from to the north, and the other one is to the east, because of the because it has a different paleotopography. And again, the high amplitude, the bright amplitude, isolated, is representing this sandy deposit. And if you look at this blue line here, the north-south blue line that crossing the wells, and this is the seismic section of it. And this map is a zone slice from this interval, and you can see here on the seismic section that you have isolated bright amplitude, and sometimes you can see some on this area here that representing the channels and lobes system. Next is about mass transport complex or mass transport deposit. Now I bring you to the New Zealand, again in the Great South Basin, this 3D cube, where we have this, you see this rounded and blocky things, that this remnant block of this mass transport deposit. So we have this canyon system here, we have a slope here, and then we have a slope failure that created this remnant block. And this is cross-section on this figure 8A, this zigzag things here. That's showing you how this MTD looks like on the seismic section. And this MTD is also correspond to the channels incision at the upper interval. And if you look at this blue arrow, this MTD is also correspond to the bottom current that has a current from this west to the east, that also shaping this mass transport deposit area to become more elongated like this. And this mass wasting is triggered by over-steepened margins, fluid dissipation, and weak geological layers. Yes, and I said before, MTD is translated over the slope, eroded by this bottom current or drips. Another example from mass transport complex and MTD, again, this is from offshore Florida, where we have this beautiful recent mass transport complex that also together with this beautiful gully system. And if you look at this, this is the cross section from east to the west. So this you see this slide scar here. This is the slide scar. It's located, and this is all this mass transport complex. And this is a example of the seismic section going like this from east to the west, where you have these chaotic, sometimes you have this big block, isolated bright amplitude that represent this mass transport complex. And regarding this MTC, I also want to inform you that one of my colleagues in our group, Haria, will also present this mass transport complex in the 5th of May. So it's free. You can just go to this IAGI UK LinkedIn to have the invitation link. And my other colleague, Henry, he also it's a webinar. It's also talking about seismic geomorphology. It's even more broad into the distal planets in Mars. I think I attended Professor Wood webinar here on seminar here on the Sedimentology Congress last year. So I also encourage you guys to also attending this 2 session. And also you can also follow our research group update in this ResearchGate profile. Next is about Contourites. So as you remember, we have a thermohaline circulation, and this it's when we have the Contourites deposit. Now I bring you to again to New Zealand, Great South Basin, where we have this Contourite case. So this is some horizons in the deeper part that we have this Antarctic circumpolar circulation from south to the north. So from south to the north like this. That also influencing the sedimentary system in this basin floor area here. And then there is a cross section here, this one, that we can see how this contourite looks like. So in this case, this contourite here, this one, is also stacked with this mounded here. At the orientation, it's in the south south north direction. So we can also infer this bottom current flow directions by looking at the internal seismic reflection progradation. And this is the interpretation of this seismic section. Another beautiful example of contourites is coming from Emiliano Muti from offshore Brazil here. That they map this. This is a horizon slice from this offshore Brazil, and also fortunately there is one well here that drill until this contourite. So if I can briefly explain, this is the shelf area, or sorry, this is the upper slope area. This is the basin floor area, and then this is their interpretation. So we have the dash red line here is the channels, intra-slope channels, and we also have these submarine lobes here. But then you have current, this blue arrow, that's a bottom current in this direction that create a beautiful contourites in the different type of contourites. So it's the feature, the contourite feature is barchan, dune, sand wave, and sand ribbons. And it's beautiful because I think and Muti said that this is the first time that they found these different type of contourites. And let's have a look the section that crossing this well here. So this is the seismic section. This is the wells here. And then you see you have a white and black colors, very bright compared to the others. Again, the low amplitude in the background that representing the suspension of the fine grain material in Deepmarine system, while this bright amplitude here is representing the sandy material. And look at this, it's the bright is also isolated, so that's a good sign for sandy depositional element. And yes, we have low relief sand drifts and isolated sand bodies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And this is the wells that penetrate that sand bodies, and it's 8.2 meters, and it's oil reservoir. So this also now it's becoming famous to have this contourite as a reservoir. I know in Indonesia, long time I read the paper a long time ago that in the northeast Java Basin, Pertamina, I think they tried to drill this contourite in the 90s or something. So yeah, now we have finished this two objective. So now the last one, what is the application of this Deepmarine seismic geomorphology? So I'm sure you know about this poster. It's published by the Geological Society of London, where they try to map the role of geoscience in the Sustainable Development Goals of United Nations. So, you know, the oil price today and the situation in the petroleum industry, and I think it's nice if we also need to broaden our knowledge into other things, right? So since now we are focusing on the deep marine, so now I bring you to these three things about what is the application of this deep marine seismic geomorphology. So based on this poster, they mentioned that we have this oceanography that's also dealing with this wind farm, hydrocarbon, of course, and also this storage, energy storage. I think I put one example also about the geohazards. Petroleum, yeah, of course, we have discussing a lot that we have sandy, we have shale, that from all these depositional elements that directly can inform you about where is your reservoir, where is your source rock, where is the seal, where is the trap. And when it comes to the system, to stratigraphy, then the publication by Peter Vail 87, Posamentier and Alan 99 will help you to locate it. Where is your reservoir, source rock, seal in the stratigraphy? But in terms of seismic geomorphology itself, so you know that you have a sandy, you have a shale. Environment, recently Ian Kane from Manchester and Michael from Oceanography, the Southampton Oceanography, last year they published about what is the relation between this deep marine process with the transported of the plastic. So that's imagine if you have industry here in the terrestrial area, and then you have a marine environment, and I think you saw the video that someone found a plastic bottle in the middle of the sea, right? So this guy they try to look at where is the possibility to have plastic is deposited in the deep marine environment. So one example, they mentioned that accumulation, preferential accumulation is on the levee of the overspilling flow of the channel system here. And also, this is on this Contourite system, and also preferential accumulation on this Contourite system here. Geohazard, yes, this is from Makassar Strait from Indonesia. There is a new publication here that they try to look at the MTD, the Master Transport Complex, to map the possibility to have a geohazard in this area. And we know that in Indonesia, in this Palu area here, we have a lot of seismicity here, and they try to map. And then if you look at this cross section, west-east cross section, you have this MTD that really close to the seabed. And imagine if you have a seismicity that can trigger this MTD, or you can even more, you can have a new slope failure in this proximal, in the self edge. Then remember this tsunami video that I showed before. Then you have you probably have a tsunami, right? Good. That we covered all these three objectives on this talk. And so in conclusion, I could say that seismic geomorphology is playing an important role in understanding the sedimentary process, sedimentary infill history, interaction with other things, with the tectonic, with other things, and also the temporal organization. And and we see from the application, it has a wider implication for geoscience disciplines. And I mentioned about the seismic facies analysis. I didn't explain in detail in this talk. So if you need more explanation about that, about the basic seismic facies analysis, I have recorded my lecture about this seismic facies analysis and other things on my YouTube channel. So you can also go to my YouTube channel to look at my lecture. Thank you.
Okay, Mas Dicky, thank you very much. This one is an interesting presentation. We get some insights on the deep water. And okay, we have 4 questions. Maybe you might turn on your audio for Mas Ramadan Ibnu.
Okay, thank you, Miss Moderator. So, Assalamualaikum and good evening, Mr. Dicky Harishidayat. Okay, it's been an honor to me, sir, for asking you directly. So, my name is Ramadan Ibnu Hasim. I'm from University Malaysia Kelantan, and I'm a final year student.
Okay.
My major is geoscience. So I have several questions regarding the seismic sedimentology and geomorphology. My first question is, can you compare by your assumption and approach between the seismic stratigraphy and seismic sedimentology? Because I reckon that this is between the stratigraphy and sedimentology seismic is the same kind of thing, but the difference is just because of the scale of the basin and the scale of reservoir. And my second question is, have you ever heard about the seismic ghosts before, sir?
Yeah.
Is it possible that seismic ghosts can shown on the 3-dimensional geomorphological sense from 2D seismic data based on your previous slide before?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all for me.
Thank you, Mas Ramadan. Langsung dijawab aja, Mbak, atau gimana?
Iya, boleh, Mas.
Oh, lanjut ya. Thank you, Mas Ramadan.
Yeah.
So the difference, you said in the first question, what is the difference between seismic stratigraphy, and you put specific things about seismic sedimentology, yeah. So as you know that now seismic sedimentology it's different because in term of the technique is different, because in the seismic stratigraphy you mostly dealing with seismic reflection termination, seismic reflection forms. But and to be able to do that, you just make a slicing or cross section, then you have it. But in seismic sedimentology, that is different. There is a professor from UT Austin called Hong Liu Zhang that invented this seismic sedimentology, and he mentioned, I met Hong Liu Zhang in the Sedimentology conference last year in Rome, and he mentioned that there is 3 things in the seismic sedimentology. First is about the 90-degree facing. Sorry, this is more geophysics now. So first is about the 90-degree facing. So you need to turn your seismic face into the 90-degree facing to be able to put your interface into the to be able to put your interface to be placed at the real sedimentary layer interface. The second one, it's about the seismic lithology. So in the seismic sedimentology, you need to also achieve the seismic lithology, which is you need to do some inversion, at least during the have lithology in your seismic. If you look at my presentation, I mostly using invert terminology or related terminology to mention if it is a sand or if it is a shell. But in seismic sedimentology, in the second point of seismic sedimentology, the seismic lithology, it means that you need to be sure where is your sand and where is your shell. In more detail, the seismic lithology can help you to look at the porosity itself. And the last one, the third point about the seismic sedimentology is the slicing methods. So you have a horizon slice, you have a time slice, and you have a zone slice. So that is the difference. And the seismic stratigraphy is founded by Peter Fell and friends in 1977. So it's quite old compared to the seismic sedimentology. And to be honest, there is some debate on the seismic sedimentology perspective, and some researchers said, why don't you call just seismic geomorphology? But Hong Liu Zhang said that no, this is different because those three things in seismic sedimentology. And about the ghost, yeah. Do you have any comments?
Sorry, sir.
Is that clear? Do you have any comments, or I can continue to the next question? Your question.
Oh, okay. It's okay, sir.
Yeah. So regarding the ghosts from 2D seismic, yeah, it is possible to. But then again, if you have a grid 2D seismic, that will help you instead of only one line parallel or 1-2 lines. That is possible. Yeah.
So is it related to seismic geomorphology?
The ghost?
Yes.
No. Yeah, you can relate it to be able to help you to see the geomorphology, because if your depositional element is higher than your seismic resolution, for sure you can see the morphology like the canyon that I shown on my slides. We have the V shape, we have the U shape. For sure you can trace this morphology by the ghost. But again, but again, you need to have the morphometry morphometry knowledge on how you will map this canyon by the ghost from proximal to the distal. If you look at my cross plot, the scaling relationship, that will help you.
Okay.
Because at least you have a if you don't have the idea about the morphometric element in your area, you can use an analog. So for instance, you are dealing in the south edge area where you have a canyon from your 2D seismic section, and then you can use analog from Barents Sea, from other area that has a similar system, just to have the trend of the depth, for instance, or the trend of the width along the slope, for instance, and then you can use that function and then to apply in your area. So it
could be an effective to remove the ghost method, right?
Yes.
Okay. I see. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
No problem. You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mas Ramadan. So we are moving on to the second question from Mas Raditya Perdana. You might turn on your audio.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Raditya Perdana. I'm from Universitas Tanjung Pura in Pontianak. So my background is geophysics. So I'm intrigued by what you said before about turbidite. You said it was very famous, right? So I'm interested to know what makes turbidite is very famous, what's the importance of turbidite? So that's my question. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mas Raditya. I know some of the sedimentologists, they will argue that they would like to call gravity flow or gravity deposit. But when I said that this turbidite, because of this Emiliano Muti and Boma sequence, maybe you heard about it. It's they found this turbidite terminology from long time ago, while we are still debating the terminology for the exact process. So now, I mean, so that's why turbidite is more famous, because then if you talk about the hybrid bed or something, it's much more specific. But when it comes to turbidite, I think everyone knows about the turbidite, and also it's also related to the other terminology in the turbidity current, right? So it's much more famous.
Is it have like pengaruh? What is it?
The influence?
Yeah, yes, influence to the maybe bedroom system or something like.
Oh
that.
yes, yes. So if you look at let me show you. If you look at my slide about the application in petroleum, this moment, this one. So at least in this area here, where these turbidite system are working, you will have in the turbidite system itself, it's mostly reservoir because it's bring sandy deposit, right? And then this sandy deposit in the turbidite system is acting as a reservoir, while since we are in the Deepmarine area, we also have fine grain material, the suspension things, then become a shell that can be seal and also can be source rock for the petroleum system.
Okay, thank you, Mas.
You're welcome, Pak.
Yeah.
Yeah, the third question coming from Mas Erlangga. Mas Erlangga, you might turn on your audio.
Pak, belum kedengaran, Pak.
Mas Erlangga still mute.
Yes,
Okay, mute. Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry.
Okay.
A
Yeah.
different button. Okay, thank you, Mas Dicky.
Hello, Mas Erlangga.
Very impressive presentation, first of all.
Thank you, Mas.
I see that you have a wide range coverage of data from northern to southern hemisphere. So from
Yes.
Norway, New Zealand, Indonesia, Middle East, Brazil, etc.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you ever find the effect of Coriolis. So Coriolis is a rotation effect to inertial force. It is caused by the Earth rotation. So in example, river will tend to have more tendency to flow clockwise in northern hemisphere or clockwise in southern hemisphere.
Yeah.
When they discharge in open sea or open water. So I wonder if it is also work in the same way in the deep sea, and in some way is preserved in the older deposit, in the levee channels or the contourite deposits. I'm just thinking, is it a myth or a reality? Maybe that's the question.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Erlangga. There is two school of thought about this, Pak, actually. One is by Zoltan Sylvester at UT Austin, and one is by Jeffrey Pickle at University of Leeds. They argue that they have a different opinion about this. And Zoltan Sylvester, actually there is a special publication at SEPM and IIS about this. And then Zoltan thought that there is no influence about this Coriolis effect in the deep marine channel. But Jeffrey Pickle from Leeds said that there is influence about this Coriolis effect that influencing the deep marine channel system. So there is a two school of thoughts actually Pak tentang about this. But based on my work, I'm working in the Barents Sea in the north, also in the New Zealand in the south, I couldn't see any effect of this.
Yeah, me myself, to be honest, I never saw the effect of Coriolis in deep water, but some of my professors do. And they said that in some deposits, the levee is tend to be like asymmetric. So it's in the left-hand side or right-hand side or something like that. But me myself, never, but yeah, you have a lot of data. So I'm thinking if you have.
I think what if you remember my slides from Brazil, I think Henry Posaminter is right. So we need to look at more data to be able to solve this challenge. But I think, I mean, if you look at my data, is quite spotted, right? I mean, I'm not working in a bigger area, so it's spotted in the north and in the south. So maybe I miss your professor finding.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pak.
Okay, thank you, Mas Erlangga. Question from Mas Januddin. You might turn on your audio to deliver your question.
Mas Januddin.
Mas Januddin, leave the meeting already, or?
I think he already left, yeah.
I left the meeting already.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is another questioner from Mr. Ridlo, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, to Mas Ridlo, you might turn on your audio, please.
Okay, thank you for the time. Good evening, Mr. Dicky. I'm from UPN, Geological Engineering, batch 2018. I have some question about I want to know, is gully erosion have an impact to the deep marine sediment load? And is it actively eroded? If it is actively eroded, what controlling factor that make it? And the second question is gully erosion still associated with turbidity current system? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mas Ridho. So the first question is if the gully erosion and the deep marine is related to sediment load, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you look at I can show you one example. Here you go. So if you look at this example, the gully is also located in the south edge. I mean, it's similar like a canyon, right? But why in the canyon you will have a very wide width and V-shape until U-shape from proximal to the distal. But why in the gully you only have I could say tiny width with not deeper area here. And remember also, since we are in the deep marine, we need to have a sediment source from south area to be able to make these things, right? So the problem here is that this gully erosion is mostly is because of is eroded by the sediment. It's the same with the canyon or channel is also eroded by the sediment. Between gully and canyon is that in the gully you don't have so much sediment transported from the terrestrial to the shelf, and also in this gully system is mostly the most influence factor is the longshore drift current on the shelf. So I think I have one example from my case here. So in this case, yeah, here you go. So in this case, you see this gully is quite bended, right here.
Yeah.
And then this gully is different with other because then you have a longshore drift in this direction here. So that's why you have this banded here. And next question, if it is effectively eroded, and what is the influence factor?
Controlling factor.
Controlling factor, yeah. What do you mean by effectively? I mean, because as long as you don't have sediment, you in this gully system, it's quite difficult to erode this to make an erosion on this system. So you need to have a sediment from terrestrial, from the shelf. But then if your sediment directly to the what's it called entry point of the sediment conduits, then you will make a canyon like here. So in this case, the canyon is connected to this self-edge delta channels in the self-edge delta. It means that there is always a sediment transported from the terrestrial to the shelf, which is using these channels in self-edge delta, and to the canyon. And in this case, the possibility to have gully is very less. But then, in this case, you don't need to have sediment conduit from on the shelf because then you need to have a calm environment. What you can do is to have this longshore drift to transfer from the sediment entry point that far from this area, and then this longshore drift will create an erosion on the gully. And the last one, gully erosion.
Is that associated with turbidity current system?
Oh, I think I have an answer here. I go, yeah. So based on the, so if you look at this, this is from Dorich Stone, 1985. So most this gully is so mostly this gully is affected by this what's called as a grain flow, because also and then this grain flow is coming from this. So you have a longshore drift current in this parallel to the self-edge, and then after that you have the grain flow. So the turbidity current is quite less in this gully system, I could say.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And next question from Alam Shah, ya. Pak Alam Shah.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, moderator, can we speak in Indonesia?
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, you can speak Indonesia.
Selamat sore, Mas Diki.
Halo Pak, selamat sore Pak.
Saya ada dua pertanyaan ini. Yang pertama terkait dengan data seismik ya.
Ya.
Bagaimana caranya kita bisa membedakan lingkungan pengendapan yang dari vulkanik sama yang karbonat kalau di seismik itu? Karena kan pengalaman kita pernah dengar itu ada pemboran yang gagal di Selat Makassar gara-gara itu gitu.
Ya.
Nah itu apakah ada tips triknya cara membedakannya? Mungkin kalau di karbonat ya ada kelihatan lah kayak rival atau pinnacle atau apa, tapi kadang ada juga nggak kelihatan gitu. Nah terus yang kedua, dari contoh-contoh yang Mas Diki berikan tadi tentang pola seismiknya, terus tentang patternnya seperti apa yang ada di situ seperti gali, terus turbidite dan sebagainya, bisa nggak dari semua contoh itu, kalau seandainya itu jadi suatu reservoir masuk dalam kategori petroleum system dan menjadi reservoir, kira-kira dari yang the best sampai yang the poor reservoir quality itu apa aja, Mas?
Ya.
Oke, itu ya, terima kasih.
Ya. Makasih Pak Alamsyah. Kalau dari seismik ya untuk volcanic sama carbonate, lagi-lagi balik ke seismic facies method, seismic facies analisisnya Peter Fell 1977 itu. Jadi kita harus perbedaannya adalah di reflection termination, reflection configuration, sama di external forms-nya Pak. Jadi kalau misalkan di volcanic, misalnya kita bicara dike ya, dike, misalkan dike. Oke, pertama sih volcanic sama carbonate karena dia punya high velocity and high density, dia akan ngasih respons yang high, bright amplitude. Jadi dari segi nilai amplitude rata-rata tuh sama antara volcanic sama carbonate. Carbonate kalau misalkan dia sempat expose mungkin akan lebih ngasilin low amplitude ya, tapi dari segi rata-rata sih rata-rata sama, dan juga biasanya dia chaotic dua-duanya. Jadi kesamaannya itu. Perbedaannya adalah di reflection termination, reflection configuration, sama di external form. Kalau misalkan di volcanic, contohnya kalau misalkan dia batolit gitu sih udah ketahuan, maksudnya dia akan bentuknya kayak tadi yang di Kora Volcano itu kan ada kayak magma chamber gitu, udah kelihatan bentuknya seperti itu. Terus kalau misalkan dia dike gitu ya, dia pasti kan akan memotong perlapisan ya. Jadi dia akan intruded sedimentary layers, dan itu juga di intrusion effect-nya tuh bisa kelihatan di seismic. Tapi lagi-lagi ini kembali ke resolusi ya Pak. Artinya kalau misalkan resolusinya kecil, dia nggak akan ke image sama seismik. Tapi anggapan kita ini skalanya besar, jadi bisa ke resolve sama seismik. Jadi intruded effect-nya itu juga akan kelihatan di seismik datanya. Dan juga kalau misalkan si dike tadi kan dia akan menghasilkan amplitude yang lebih bright daripada sedimentary layers. Kalau karbonat, perbedaannya adalah kalau misalnya kita bicara reef ya, kalau Carbonaclastic agak susah karena dia kan berfungsi sebagai matriks dari sandstone-nya, jadi itu kita bisa agak susah tuh kalau untuk membedainnya. Tapi misalkan dia platform gitu, carbonate platform gitu, itu akan terlihat dari kenampakan, pertama dari reflection pattern-nya. Kalau di bukunya Peter Fell ini dia bilang kalau misalkan ada yang namanya mounded. Nah, si mounded ini biasanya kan kalau misalkan kita lihat reef kan itu kan dia tumbuhnya kan ngikutin sea level ya, sea level fluctuation. Artinya juga nanti lateral temporal morfologinya juga bisa kelihatan dari seismik. Terus yang reflection configuration juga bisa beda dari karbonat sama volcanik. Dan yang terakhir tuh external formnya. External formnya itu artinya bentukan 3 dimensionnya juga berbeda. Nah, kayak misalkan dike sama reef. Kalau dike umumnya memanjang, terus dia memotong perlapisan. Sedangkan kalau yang reef itu kan dia kayak pohon cemara gitu kan tumbuhnya. Jadi beda Pak. Dan sebenarnya sih kita sebagai seismic interpreter nggak bisa stand alone juga, karena kita juga harus lihat data-data. Ini kalau saya keluar dari topik seismik ya, kalau dalam menjawab pertanyaan Pak Alamsyah ini, kalau misalkan ada data yang lain, kita juga harus lihat data yang lain, kayak misalkan contohnya gravity sama magnetik. Itu nanti juga artinya tetap dengan si gravity magnetik itu juga akan ngasih respon yang berbeda terhadap interpretasi kita untuk ngebedain vulkanik sama karbonat ini. Turbidite itu ada pengaruh. Oh, ininya apa? Kualitinya ya, Pak ya? Kualiti turbidite.
Quality reservoir dari yang contoh-contoh Mas Diki berikan tadi, seandainya masuk dalam kategori petroleum system ya, bagian dari petroleum system. Kira-kira the best quality-nya itu yang mana, sama yang poor quality itu yang mana? Apakah turbidite kah, atau gali, atau apa gitu, urutannya gitu Mas, biar.
Kalau untuk petroleum system mungkin agak kompleks nih Pak kita ngomongin, karena kan ada source rock, migration, trapping mechanism, seal, reservoir. Mungkin kita sempitin ke reservoir aja.
Betul, ke reservoir quality-nya Mas.
Oh,
jadi
oke.
Ya, dari contoh-contoh tadi itu gimana urutannya?
Oh ya, kalau untuk reservoir quality, at least kita akan bicara reservoir quality itu kan kita akan bicara dengan porositas ya. Porositas itu kita akan bicara dengan kemas. Aduh, ini jadi masuk ke sedimentologi nih, mohon maaf. Jadi di mana sih kemas yang paling bagus gitu ya? Kalau tadi Pak Amsel lihat proses turbidity flow yang di laboratorium itu, kita kan punya head, ada body, ada tail gitu ya. Nah, pada umumnya memang si kemas itu kan akan tersortasi dengan baik di bagian akhir ya, Pak ya, karena kan dia akan jadi semakin bagus ya. Nah, itu pada paling bagus itu adalah submarine channel sama fan, terutama di bagian distal gitu ya. Karena umumnya grain size-nya juga akan berkurang ke arah basin floor kan. Jadi yang pertama itu submarine channel sama submarine fan. Terus mungkin kalau yang kedua itu Contourites juga sekarang udah mulai dikejar, karena itu juga dia punya kemas yang bagus karena si bottom current itu juga membuat kemasnya, sortasinya juga jadi semakin bagus. Jadi pertama submarine channel, submarine fan, Contourites. Kendala dengan canyon itu adalah rata-rata ya Pak, kalau canyon di dunia itu tuh terbentuk pada saat dia low stand system track. Jadi kalau misalkan ada sih yang di high stand sama di transgresif, tapi umumnya itu pada saat low stand. Nah, rata-rata setelah low stand itu tuh didominasi dengan high stand atau transgresif system track. Jadi canyon fill-nya yang harusnya jadi reservoir itu banyak keisi sama fine grain material dari transgresif atau high stand deposit. Jadi artinya secara porositas dan permeabilitas itu kurang bagus kalau di canyon. Nah, yang kalau gully kita punya masalah di dimensinya, karena gully itu kalau tadi Pak saya lihat di crossflow saya juga width-nya tuh nggak terlalu besar gitu loh. Dan juga filling deposit dari si gully itu juga sama tadi kayak si canyon tadi, karena dia posisinya di self edge kan. Yang terakhir mungkin mass transport deposit juga itu juga bervariasi ya ininya. Mungkin kalau yang di mass transport deposit yang bagian depan itu mungkin kita bisa dapat kemas yang bagus ya, karena kalau di bagian proximal kan boulder gitu kan, jadinya membuat kemasnya kurang bagus. Demikian Pak Alamsyah.
Oke, Mas Diki, terima kasih. Ini bisa menambah referensi saya nanti.
Sama-sama.
Terima kasih Mas Alamsyah. Next question ya, the last question from Hanif. Yeah.
Okay, Mas Dicky, thank you for the presentation. Very nice presentation. One more last question from me. Sorry for being late. In your slides just now, I saw some truss features. These features are usually related to high sedimentation loading, or be related to some tectonic compression events. Based on your experience, how do they occur? And the components of them, are they very hard and lithified? If there are some strong mass transport deposits, can they just impede these truss features and result in destroying or penetrating them? So could you answer those queries?
So for the first one, you said you asked about the truss. in turbidite?
Yeah, in some of your slides, just now there are some features that I see labeled as thrust. So these features are related to seismic compression, so related to events or high sedimentation loading that relates to some shell diapers or something. It's kind of like anticlinal thrust features.
Anticline thrust features. Oh, do I have it? Anticline thrust feature. Do you know which slide? I don't.
I can't remember already which slide.
Trust. I didn't. Did I mention about trust? No, I don't think I mentioned about trust.
It's okay then. It's okay if it's not there. It's okay.
No, I don't. I think I don't mention about the trusting. If it is MTD, you might have some trust, but it's trusting not because of the tectonic, but it's because of the MTD itself. That's. I think if I can only recognize the word trust in my slides, I think it can come from the MTD.
Okay.
Okay, and then your next question, can you repeat again?
Yeah, it's still related to the trust. So if you're talking about the trust features created by these MTDs, sequence flows, do they provide like a confined spaces for the turbidites, or the itself is very tough? That is.
Yeah. When you have a thrust, then you will create like a ridge in the bathymetry, right? And then for sure it can create a barrier for the turbidite. Yes, for sure.
Okay, that's all.
Okay, I think that's the last question. Yeah, we should breaking the fast time. This is already 6 p.m. in Indonesia, yeah, Jakarta. Thank you, Mas Dicky, for the excellent presentation. Very wide coverage. Yeah, and we have FOSI want to express our thank you. We wish you the best for your PhD. Okay, and all the best for your study, yeah, and for your next plan. Okay, I will give the time to Melinda to close the session.
No, I just want to close. Yeah, thank you, Mas Ricky, and to Mas Dicky as well. To all participants, thank you very much to spare your time. And to Mas Dicky, good luck for your PhD, and see you in another occasion. Maybe later on the slides, if possible, to share, I will share to participants as well. And see you in another occasion. To all participants, thank you very much. Still tune on to the FOSI Instagram for the info. And last but not least, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Mas Dicky. Ya.
Semua.
Ya. Ini recordingnya saya stop ya, Mas ya.
Siap.
Oke, thank you.